And hello to everyone. It looks like we've got a good number of people. I wonder how far dispersed across Turtle Island we are. I'm coming to you from the edge of Lake Ontario, just outside of Toronto, which has been home to many waves of migrants and colonizers, um, and migration is certainly a theme that will come up just now. Before I jump into things, I want to acknowledge that on this call, you're getting Ben, but all the stories I'll be sharing are really the stories that have been co-created by many, many more people who are very much behind me and part of the sort of movements that I've been privileged enough to be a part of in the last few years, especially. So I want to sort of symbolically bring that presence of many other people into the room with us today. So I would ask how everyone is doing, but it would probably be very technically complicated to hear back from you all. So I'll just trust that you're all well. I hope you are. For the next hour that we have together, I'm going to take us through about 30,000 miles, 55,000 kilometers of geography, and a few major experiences that I've had, that I've been a part of, that I'm drawing from. So you'll have to forgive me in advance. We are going to be covering an awful lot of ground quite quickly. So I'll move quite quickly. Now, having said that, there will be some moments for questions, and I'll let you know when those are. Having said that, I'll try to keep some time at the end for meta questions, as it were. Uh, Now, in the confines of the time we have, um, I'd also like to say that I'm very happy to follow up outside of this 1 hour slot, whether on email or however is best, if any folks really have something burning inside and they want to discuss at a later date. So through the team, whether it's Tyler or Caitlin, you can get my contact and we can connect. Okay, I'm going to jump into things. The themes of this exploration I want to do with you all revolve around community-minded work versus community-led work. And I actually have Tyler to thank for that theme, which came in an email. Okay, Ben, you're doing a talk about community-minded work, and I said no, I'm doing a talk about community-led work, and it's so important to recognize that difference. So that's really the heart of this talk. What is the difference between a process or a project or an initiative that is where the community is informed versus where the community informs the process? What is the difference between a project that is inherently grounded in local context and needs and resources, or a project that follows a more, we could say, colonial model of aid or top-down model of aid? Other sort of themes that I'll touch on is who are we within the work we do? What is my position, my identity within this work? How do I connect with the community I'm working with? Um, that comes down to power and privilege, whether that's your own or the institution or the group or the company, the organization you're with. Other themes that I'll be touching on throughout this is what it looks like to mobilize local resources. So you'll notice I mention words like grassroots a lot, and what I mean by that is when work happens, when projects and processes happen, really rise out of the resources, the visions, the skills that are on the ground. And another sort of question that I'd encourage you to sort of have in your head is, in terms of project work that you're doing, especially service-related work, why am I here in the first place? What brought me to be doing this service project? Is it because I feel a desire to get something done? Is it because I feel that my fate is bound up with the fate of the people I'm working with? Is it because this is something that drives my own passion? So these are some of the areas we'll touch on. I'm going to share my screen now, and you won't see me anymore. You'll see much more interesting photos. So bear with me. Let's see how this goes. Okie dokie. All right. So this I often talk about the concept of beyond resilience. Now, I can't see any of you anymore, so if anything goes strange, someone will have to contact me on my phone. I like to nest this discussion in this question of what exists beyond resilience. We hear this term being thrown around lately, and to give you a bit of a plot killer, the focus for me in the last few years of work has been regeneration, which I see as the next step after building resilience, whether that's ecological, environmental, social, cultural. The next step beyond resilience is regeneration. And a lot of the projects that we'll be looking at just now explore these concepts of regeneration and what that looks like. Also, what brings us here? What brings you to the program you're part of? Maybe it's to recognize that you think change needs to happen. Maybe it's mourning ecological destruction of ocean habitats in particular. Maybe it's to celebrate the fact that you feel you have a lot to give, a lot of great changes happening. You want to be part of that. What brings me here, the reason that I'm moved and excited to share stories like this, is the hope that I find in exchanging resources and connecting different communities, actors, activists, and initiatives, not just regionally, but transnationally. And this is what we're going to be getting into, this series of projects. I'm not an organization. What I'll be talking about is a few projects within this series of projects that I carried out with an Indian waste upcycling artist named Prashant Kumar. And that green and red line is the geography we're going to go through in the next 40 minutes. So hold on tight. My background is in education and community organizing. I grew up in Guelph, in Ontario, and for several years I was working in alternative forms of education, disrupting the norms of how young people are learning what it means to be a useful citizen. For me, that meant service learning, project-based learning.
You click on that and go to your preferences for your Mac.
Really instilling notions of what it means to do effective work in your community through whether that's through academia or in your own life afterwards.
So if you go to system preferences on your Mac.
Yeah.
Just pausing it.
Yeah.
Are we good? Should I take a wee pause?
It's okay, yeah. I'll just, hey guys, sorry that we can hear you talking on your phone. If you don't mind muting yourselves there.
If you go to my Mac.
Okay, I've got it. System
Okay.
preferences. Okay, and then what did you say?
I think you can go ahead, Ben. I don't think.
Okay, I'll just follow along.
And then it should show headphones.
Within my work in those past years, I was experimenting with different ways that learning can engage conflict, for example, and violence, and what forms of learning can we bring to young people who come from histories of violence that can be used as tools to transform that violence into transformation. So nonviolent communication, train the trainer programs, conflict resolution, and doing this through, for example, a youth festival as opposed to a classroom format. In those years where I was doing a lot of educational experimentations, I also developed a mindfulness program, which for me was a very acute way of helping people, whether that was students, administration, faculty, reconnect with really what drives them, their driving purpose in life. For me, this has become an element of any project I do, is why are we really here, and honing that personal drive, that clarity of why we're in the work we're in.
Yeah, that I went to.
Now, you'll also, in the next little while, hear a lot of Prashant, this fellow who ended up spending the last 3.5 years doing these projects with. Prashant comes from a very different background. He's an upcycling artist, which means he works primarily with waste materials, creating all sorts of things. Starting with animal shelters. When he was a teenager, young in his 20s, he started making animal shelters from waste, not having the money needed to build a shelter, but not wanting to stop simply because he didn't have funds. He then started creating more products from waste, and
this is such a nightmare.
Kareen,
I hate doing this.
I'll pause for another moment and see.
Hold on. Kareen,
something always goes wrong.
Kareen, could you mute your sound? We can hear you on the conference line through WebEx. We're having some wonderful issues with our translation line right now. I think we're good.
Okay. All right, I want to get back into it. All right, here we go.
Sorry.
Now, Prashant discovered that he could not only provide a very good livelihood for himself through taking waste and transforming it, but he could provide a livelihood to 20, 30, 40 other people who were the breadwinners for their families. In this sense, he stumbled across what I would call resilient livelihood, a form of resilient livelihood. No matter what your buying power into a market is, you're able to get resources, secondhand resources in this case, that allow you to earn a living through that. Prashant became known as an artist for this work, and in 2015 hosted Pune in India, just south of Mumbai, Pune's first international artist residency. That's him smashing through a wall on a motorcycle to open the residency. That's where he and I met. Long story short, 6 months of close friendship later, we decided to set off together on motorcycles from India to Scotland, his motherland to mine, exploring the ways communities around the world are overcoming issues directly without waiting for support from government, but different examples of what we would come to call direct action and grassroots organizing. And the name of inspired by this ancient 4,000-year-old Sanskrit phrase, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the whole world is one family. So here the pace is going to pick up a bit as we start this journey. We started in Bombay, Mumbai, working in education. I won't spend much time on this project. It was an incredible experience of seeing the depth of learned experience that folks who grew up in a slum community, a legal ghettoized community, have that other academic young folks certainly wouldn't have, and the learning exchange that can happen when you bring people from different learning backgrounds together. Our second project was very much Prashant's neck of the woods. This was a project that was born when a friend of his said, look, I want to build a community center and I only have 1,500 USD. Can you build it for me? And Prashant, being very confident, said, yes, of course I can, never having built a house before. Now here, one of the big themes of our work emerged, and that is, how can you take a limitation and turn it into an incredible opportunity? Here, the limitation was funding. We only had $1,500 to work with. But we saw that limitation as an opportunity to challenge norms of affordable housing as Habitat for Humanity, for example, or large global NGOs predicate. So Habitat for Humanity will peg an affordable house at $60,000 US dollars. We were trying to do something for 1/50th of that. Now, in this project, which was quite small in a sense, social things started happening. People from the local village started getting much more involved. International tourists started getting involved. And local techniques of building that were starting to die off were brought back through this project. The result, after 24 days of an awful lot of volunteer work and a few paid laborers and $1,500 US dollars, was a home that can fit about 12 people, currently has a small library in it for local village youth, and is an eco-hostel for people to come connect with ecology and a sense of sustainable living. This was also, of course, it was our attempt to make a testament to what you can do with very little money, but with community collaborative effort. And by drawing indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge of construction from the region, and combining that with upcycled, innovative approaches. So you can see in the walls here, thousands of glass bottles replacing bricks. And everything else is sourced from within about 20 kilometers, from the mud, the cow dung, the camel dung, the grass thatched roof. So this project really gave us a sense of what we could do on a global scale, especially when we received some recognition from the Global Eco Village Network, which is a great organization. And we became aware that we weren't working in an isolated manner. We were part of a series of global networks doing similar work. So at this point, we let folks know, look, this is our plan, this is our vision. Now that you've seen the first few projects we've done, this is what we intend to do, and we need help to do that. We started launching crowdfunding campaigns and really bringing these stories, these visions we had of community-led direct action to women's groups, to youth groups, to architectural groups, traveling across India, some 14,000 kilometers across India, with Buddy the dog, Prashant's rescue dog, who I could talk about for hours, but I won't just now. Fantastic dog, kept us alive the whole journey. Also helped with construction, of course. Now this leads to Bihar, and this is where I'm going to slow down a bit and spend most of this talk on this project. Bihar is where Prashant is from. It is the fastest growing, most densely populated land in India. It's also a region of incredible economic poverty, unemployment, corruption, and yet it is the site of some of the oldest university in the world, which is Nalanda University, where the Buddha used to give lecture, for example. So you have this region that is incredibly rich in history and potential, but is developing in urban sprawl in a sense that is ecologically destructive as well as culturally and socially harmful. It's also a very vulnerable region in the face of climate change, since it's the flat land right after the Himalayas opened up. Now, Prashant had always wanted to leave Pune, where he'd moved, and move back to skills training center, which would be his way of bringing his work as an upcycling artist back to a place that really needed resilient livelihood. So we stayed in Bihar for a few weeks. It became a few months, and what happened was the first stage of any project we do, and any project I would encourage anyone to do, which is a needs assessment. In our case, that was a very organic needs assessment. That looked like having meals with people in the local villages, playing music with local folks, really getting to know the ins and outs of that region, which of course is easier when one of you is from there, and Prashant's family has been there for some 17 generations. Now, in that same time, the seasonal flooding happened, but with the growth of population and with limited resources to deal with flooding and the destruction of housing, 500 people died just in our area of Bihar. Now, imagine 500 people dying in Vancouver or in Toronto or Montreal. It was it really hit us. It was a very heavy blow for us. And of course for folks in the region, and that inspired us to put the whole journey on hold, leave our planned schedule and program, and expectations, even expectations we had shared with other people. And we decided to stay in this region and see if we could create not only that skills training center Prashant always wanted to make, but also a model for resilient housing. Now, this is different from sustainable housing like the first home we built. This would be, we hoped we would build a model of housing that would be able to grow its own food, treat its own wastewater, harvest renewable energy, and be affordable. So if you were to replicate a house like this 1,000 times, you would have a village that was more or less autonomous. Now, as we got into this work, emergence began. Things that were unplanned began to occur. And one of those elements was the social element of young people who would just show up on our work site saying, "Who are you? We never go to school because teachers never show up because they don't get paid. What can we do to join you or to help?" So I organized a team of local folks, trained them up to be trainers, to do Hindi classes, all sorts of workshops with folks. And every day we started having workshops happening in the local community, which led to workshops at regional universities and colleges. And as this project became a bit of a buzz in the region, we realized we have our foot in the door. And when we had a podium to speak from, we made the discussion not only about the project we had planned of building a skills training center or a model for resilient housing. We took that opportunity to talk about, look, what would it mean if Bihar as a region decided to really make a collective effort to become more resilient in the face of climate change, also in the face of gender discrimination, in the face of corruption, in the face of unethical economic structures and politics and policies. So this is bringing us into systems thinking, into How do we address intersecting issues within a region? Perhaps with one single project that is a construction project, but how do we bring in those other elements while we're in the process of that project? Now, again, emergence is a beautiful thing. One thing that emerged from these programs with young people is their parents met because their kids were meeting. And for the first time in generations, families from different classes and caste systems were connecting and meeting. Now, within the physical construction, this building resilient design, this term that emerged over the process, is a combination of the following things. It's resistant materials, which in this case is flood-proof, earthquake-proof cement, concrete, combined with natural materials. That's, again, cow dung, local mud, rice husk, all sorts of things. A lot of upcycled waste, that's mostly metal, wood, and glass bottles, and self-sufficient systems. So that's your water system, water filtration. Greenpeace India came on board with a solar unit. And the whole process of construction, like this first project, was very much, on the one hand, a reflection of local ways of doing things, and on the other hand, Prashant's crazy innovations, such as this simple example, this doorway that these folks are building, made entirely from scrap wood. The reason they're laughing is Prashant dropped off all this. Make a proper door with this. It's Bihar. Someone will break through. And then he showed him a few tricks, and the result is a door that weighs 2 tons, will last just as long as any other door, and is made from scrap wood and scrap metal, therefore is about 30% of the cost it ought to be. So this is a solution, an upcycled solution, if you will, that suddenly is a product that is accessible to lower income people. So Pavan, the third gentleman in this photo, he went back to his village and got hired building doors like this for folks in the village who now have security. They have a secure doorway that they can afford. They've upcycled a bunch of scrap in their area, and he has employed himself through that. So essentially the prototype had already begun of the kind of skills training that Prashant wanted to do in that region. Now, as we got further into the project, more people started coming on board. Artists started donating materials, and people started joining us from all over the world, which is quite something because this region we were in, the last foreigners really in this region were the British colonizing forces. So this was quite something for local folks to see. On the opening day, Prashant's grandmother, Dadi Maji, bless her heart, when she was about 96, took her first airplane in her life and flew up to cut the ribbon over this building, which was the land that she had farmed her entire life growing up. Talk about the connection of a project with the families, the people who have been in that land for generations. Now, the result aesthetically of this project was, on the one hand, it was a skills training center, a future skills training center. On the other hand, it was a statement, once more, of look what you can do with waste, with natural materials, with half of the cement most construction uses, and with sustainable systems that will take care of a lot of your basic needs. In a context, a region where suddenly the water supply might be cut off, or the food market might be shut down. Now, of course, it also had to be a beautiful aesthetic. It had to seduce, here we're talking the middle class, the aspiring upper middle class. Now, all the plaster you see on the inside is mud plaster, although it looks like cement. Some of our old motorcycle chains became the windows. Now, this project, as well as being a construction project, very much was, it was a year-long process of building community. And this is something that I always love thinking of. What is the product of our work? But also, what is the process of our work? What is the outcome, the social outcome of what we're doing here on the ground in any given project? And the social outcome here was a community was formed around this vision. 12 months later, now we're at about 20 months later, the garden around the house is flourishing. It's growing enough food for the same 10 families who were hired to help build the house, and they're taking the vegetables home. And the space has become a bit of an ecological niche. It's become a micro ecosystem where species that have not been seen in that region for quite some time are returning. So this is really a win in the struggle to maintain ecosystem and biodiversity in an increasingly urbanizing context. All the same thoughts can be applied in a marine environment. Speaking of marine environments, shortly after Prashant returned to Bihar just in October last year, this happened, the floods, the seasonal floods, worse than they've ever been. This year, 11 million people were displaced just in Bihar. Imagine that, 11 million people, a third of Canada. So as a response to this, Prashant, first quite overwhelmed, said, okay, well, luckily there's a community around us who have already been catalyzed through that project of building the place, who are ready to get things done. So Prashant worked with local activists, organizers. They got teams together. We put out a call out for funding, and started doing very simple on-the-ground relief work, handing out blankets, basic water filtration units. And the flooded water in the Bihar Center is currently being transformed into the center's latest aquatic feature. This is Ravi on the left, a young guy who was, an 11-year-old boy when we were doing the construction, and is now becoming an intern under Prashant, learning all sorts of the work that other adults in the area are sharing. This is resilience. This is the difference between when a flood comes, being destroyed by it, and adapting to it. If you want, you can relate this to principles of permaculture, working with water, seeing the way that the ecosystem around you is going to change inevitably, and altering yourself instead to benefit from that. Okay, I'm going to take a break there and turn off my screen sharing. And this is a moment where we could stop and do any responses or questions before I jump into the next sort of section. So I'll take a few moments, I'll be quiet. If anyone wants to write a question or ask a question with your microphone, whatever's best, let me know. Otherwise, I'll power ahead.
Hi, Ben. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So my name is Tanisha, and thank you so much for the really incredible talk. This is a really great system with a lot of obvious benefits for changing lives and perspectives, and affordable housing and sustainability. And it's really amazing to hear that this is being implemented, and yeah, really exciting. What kind of limitations would there be of implementing a system like that in Canada, aside from the fact that there's snow and regulations on building permits? And I'm sure there'd be a lot of complicated hoops to jump through.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Thank you so much for asking that. Great. I'll jump into responding to that question. Yeah, so this is one of the main things I've learned in my quite young career. I'm 29 myself, I'm a youth. In my quite young experience of doing this kind of work, one big takeaway from that Prashant and I share is that not a single project we've done could be implemented anywhere else because of the inherent, extremely localized, site-specific nature of the work. Not only does this mean that your materials are inspired by the local ecology, the aesthetics are inspired by local customs and culture, but the outcome of the project, and indeed the process, is inspired by local needs. I would argue it should be driven exclusively by local needs. So is the Bihar house needed in Canada? I would say probably not. Is something like it needed? Perhaps. Look completely different? Definitely. A little electrical issue here. So I think in terms of weather, you've hit one nail on the head. It would not look like that at all. You would need lots of insulation. It would cost probably 6 times more to build. In terms of regulation, I'm sure it would also be a bloody nightmare to build. We never would have been able to do the kind of work we did in North America, unless we were very remote, perhaps, and under the radar. But I think what would be common is okay, we do a needs assessment. We come to understand what kind of design would serve this region, what local materials have been used traditionally in the past that are natural, that are sustainable, that are locally sourced, and what kind of hybrids are already out there in the field that we can incorporate into this. In that sense, it would look completely different. It would feel different. Budget would be different. Timeline would be different. But it could be guided. It could also result in a center for resilient livelihood. It could result in a center for skills training for regeneration on a regional basis. But the process would be very different. To what extent does that answer your question or your brilliant observation?
Absolutely. No, I kind of figured there were a lot of large hoops to jump through for something like that to be implemented here, but that's great to hear that you had such a good opportunity to take that somewhere that could be implemented.
Yeah, and we certainly have been opportunistic. We've taken the shots that we can get, and we've run with them. Any other questions or points or critiques or ideas or little discussions to richen this before I jump into the next chapter? Going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to keep going, and we can do questions later on as well. We've still got quite a lot of ground to cover. I also want to take this moment to really kind of inform the field. I don't even know what the field is called. I would call it community-led direct action, perhaps. But I'm very my own knowledge in this field is emerging. It's forming as I go. So I feel very privileged to share some of the things I've gleaned in the last few years with you folks. But by no means is this a clever person telling you clever things. I'm adding something to dialogue that collectively we all need to evolve and develop, whether we're Canadians, whether we identify differently, whether we're from different parts of the world. Okay, let's get back into it. I'm not used to sitting in a chair in my room when I do this. Normally I'm much less comfortable, so it's a bit funny. Okie dokie. I'm going to skip through quite a lot of work quite quickly to get to the next project. So I hope you don't get car sick. And I'm also going to make some references to projects that I'll then give you links to look deeper into if you're curious at all. After the Bihar project, we went to Nepal, where in a way similar work, Prashant helped to design a playground from upcycled waste in a community where the 2015 earthquake of Nepal had brought down the school, and the school was rebuilt, but they ran out of budget for the playground. Now, again, working with waste means you can build in a very small budget. What is interesting here is how this is a demonstration, again, of intersectionality. You might think, okay, well, this is clearly a project about education or play. But the actual fact here was that young girls, like this girl on the right, her age of sort of 9, 10, 11, 12, if they weren't going to school, they would often end up being married and essentially working as maids, housekeepers for the rest of their life. Now, if there's no playground at a school, kids don't go to school. So suddenly the existence or lack thereof of a playground can lead to an increase in child marriage. So again, for us, this was a lesson in how everything is connected, how gender issues of racism, sexism, access to resources, to food, to information, all of this is connected.
Sorry to interject, Ben. Do you want to share your screen?
Oh my goodness. Good one. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Good on you. Where would I be with it? All right. I guess so here we are, Nepal. Now, the other half of this project, this was my work, was, okay, who else is working in education in this region and doesn't have a budget? So I called together, through several months of networking, about 6 NGOs working in education with no budget. And while Prashant worked with local welders in this village to build this playground, all the local NGOs working in education came together, and we did a little organizational framework training, I would call it. What is your ultimate vision? How are you working towards that vision? And how can you develop your programs accordingly to reflect that vision? Consultancy work, I suppose, but we were never clever enough to charge for anything we did, which is why we're still in debt for this whole series of projects. Don't come to us for good economic models for your own good. Now, one lovely outcome from this work, which was a very quick project for us, had we just shown up, built a playground, and buggered off, that would be classic, all those great terms. White savior complex, colonialist models of aid, blah, blah, blah. Which is why our frameworks are always resisting those models. Our frameworks are always, what is a local initiative that's currently happening? How can we join with that initiative, put our skills on the table, see how they match needs, and then contribute to something that is community-led and therefore sustainable? In this case, our main partner was an amazing organization called the Himalayan Climate Initiative, led mostly by Nepali women. And after the 2 months we collaborated with them, Prashant went back and met with them a few times to help them launch an upcycling training program for women as a large-scale way of addressing the issue of women marrying as a form of economic safety. You know, you don't earn money, so you marry a man, and that way you'll have food on the table. Well, what if you can earn your own money through, for example, upcycling? And now this program has 2 large workshops, several hundred participants. Now, that is an example of something we, on our small scale, could never achieve. But in that collaboration, sharing some of our skills and helping them set up the basics, they were able to run with it. Okay, from here, these are all little photos I took from while we were using Google Maps. And the bottom photo shows you the shift in the, I don't know if they're the tectonic plates, you might know better than me, but the shift from the Indian subcontinental green to the Tibetan plateau. I won't spend much time getting into this journey, the journey itself. We can talk about this over a cup of tea or a pint another day, but it was very cold, it was stunning. We got to witness not only the tallest peak on Earth, Mount Everest, but also the incredible resilience, again, of Tibetan peoples and the Uyghur Muslim population in the northwest of China, both extremely oppressed people. And that was a very humbling experience for us. I'm also going to go quite quickly through this chapter in Kyrgyzstan. Suffice to say, we arrived to Kyrgyzstan for 6 days of a project, and we stayed for 4 months. So that, again, tells you a bit about how much we trust emergence at this point in this series of projects. This fellow, Victor, had joined us as a volunteer previously in India. He then worked with the UN, quit his job at the UN to join us full-time because he was tired of bureaucracy, essentially, and missed direct on-the-ground work. So he became a sort of an intern. I trained him up to become a trainer, so I did a train the trainer with him, and he'll reappear later on in the story. In Kyrgyzstan, we did a whole series of mini projects working with farmers, discussing what it would look like to create unions to organize themselves better and fight for better pay. Prashant worked with nomadic families and artists to bring more tourism to their places of residency, where they also sell horse milk as a means of living. So that's art as a way of bringing about social change. And in Uzbekistan, we connected with a women's shelter doing incredible work illegally for 30 years because the dictatorial president for 30 years has said that domestic violence does not exist. Now with them, we didn't have time to engage in a project per se. So what we've been doing since then is sending them volunteers. So that's a way of, we don't have resources, but we do have a pretty beautiful global network of people like yourselves who are incredibly skilled, passionate, and want to do fantastic work. Now, from here, we had quite a shocking experience of traveling across what used to be the world's 5th largest inland sea, the Aral Sea, which is now a dry desert. What was really sad about driving across this landscape was not just the ecological life that has been lost, but villages that used to be fishing villages and have become farming villages when the fish were gone, the water was gone. And now those farming villages are literally dying off year by year because all that's left on the seabed is salt and chemicals from the industrial cotton growing process that soaked up all the water. This occurred over the course of 80 years. Imagine Lake Ontario in 80 years disappearing. Our means of travel was simple, living also simple. That's another story for a pint another day. And here we come to the last project that I'm really going to spend time on. And we've only got 9 minutes left. Now, this project was one of our focus projects. It took about 6 months to plan, and then everything changed last minute. This took place in Lesvos, which is in Greece. It's one of the most beautiful, idyllic Mediterranean islands you can imagine. It's also home to Europe's largest refugee camps, notably Moria refugee camp. Now, we got to these refugee camps with quite a good database of who was on the ground, and that's my work. So for months beforehand, I had been networking with every NGO I could find. That's the UNHCR, Habitat for Humanity, all sorts of smaller local initiatives, and doing what I always do, which is mapping out what are your needs and what are our skills and how can we combine those to do something effective. When we got to the ground, we did a needs assessment, as always, which is different from my email needs assessments. You know, one thing that I've learned is reality on paper is never the same as reality on the ground. So we did our on-the-ground needs assessment. For 5 days, we met with every NGO we could. And then we did a more organic needs assessment where we just sat with folks from the camps and said, look, what's needed? Now, luckily with language, we could connect quite well. I speak French. Most of the folks there are West African. The other half are Afghani, and Prashant and I both speak Urdu. So we were able to quite intimately connect with folks and get a sense of really what was needed was a source of heating. I could take quite a lot of time talking about this project, talking about the dire situations in which children are being born in these refugee camps, in which child suicide has become a scientifically studied phenomenon here. All sorts of horrendous things are happening. It's also a place with a lot of potential, and we tried to tap into that while we were there. So Prashant designed a small stove from scrap metal that would be a sort of a heating unit. You'd fire the stove up, wait for it to burn down to embers, pop it in your tent, heat up the space for an hour, put it back outside before it smokes, and be warm enough to fall asleep, and then do it again in 4 hours' time. It was an extremely imperfect solution, really designed to prevent death from cold. That was it. In order to do this, we didn't have funds as usual. We didn't have a team. Now, if we had been an NGO, we would have taken a year to get through the red tape. We're not an NGO. We work in a very on the ground, sneaky manner. And what we ended up doing was not calling out to the NGOs, but calling out to local people in the camps, or rather refugees, asylum seekers, people on the move, and saying, look, who is a skilled welder? And of course, many people are skilled welders and haven't had the chance to put their hands to their tools in years. And so the folks reconnected with their passion, with their skills, and addressed their own need themselves. We simply facilitated the process. We connected them with scrap metal. We put out an international call out for donations to buy the metal. And the other key element of this project was the local Greeks who we connected with. The local Greek community have barely gotten involved in this, other than a few outliers. This is Yorgos. You can see the smiling face and the beard with the background. Yorgos is a Greek olive farmer who is a great example of folks there who have seen their island be destroyed by refugees, as they would put it. Now, if you have a bunch of international NGOs coming into a foreign land where there are other foreign people who are arriving as migrants and refugees, and all of these people together are trying to solve an issue, you're probably not going to get very far. And that's what we see in a lot of these cases of refugee camps around the world with Western European, North American young university students trying to run NGOs. We recognize a lot of NGOs are also doing incredible work, much larger scale than we could pull off, but we also saw that there was an opportunity to connect local Greeks and skilled refugees to do work together. A lot of behind the scenes people you're not seeing in this photo are the women who helped organize things, who were a bit camera shy, but were very much a part of this project. The outcome of this project, on the one hand, was stoves. It was the first winter in years when no one died of cold in the overflow camp, which was hugely exciting. Also, Mohammed Riza, one of the key welders, discovering his work as an upcycling artist, and he is now selling products online and has made his way with his family to Switzerland. And the Greeks we connected with, who are now developing permaculture gardens with refugees, and really taking things forward in a beautiful way. Now, this project, if anything, what we achieved was not making stoves. What we achieved was demonstrating to the international community, look what happens when you leverage the resources of these incredibly skilled folks in the camps and these incredibly resourceful local inhabitants. Now, what does that look like, not just in Lesvos, but in the places where global southern migrants are arriving to the global north? Well, that looks like designing systems at a national level that are designed to receive migrants, the skills they have, and have collaborations between people on the move, refugees, asylum seekers, and local populations that address local needs. Again, it's needs-based designed work. Address local needs for a good economy, for healthy neighborhoods, for safety. And that's often when we do these talks in community groups, we often really strain the message of this project being, look at the power of collaboration here. Now, Victor, the young fellow from France who had joined us, he returned and worked with us in Lesvos, and he and I set up a small training program for refugee folks to prepare for their life after being a refugee. So writing a CV, coming into ownership of their journey, their skills. We drafted a pilot. We did a pilot program for a few months. Prashant and I continued on, moved back full-time to Greece. And with Mohammed, a fellow from the camps, is running this program as a full-time course with about 60 participants throughout the year. Here, often in a public talk, I would hit play on this video, which is a beautiful 15-minute short documentary film made by Yaren Kosa, a Turkish filmmaker who was with us on the ground in Lesvos. I highly encourage you save the link. This is how you can find it on YouTube, and just pop it into your browser this evening, whenever you get a moment, and you'll see some of this story told with more interesting images. This is essentially where the story ends. From there, we rode real quick to Scotland. We survived. No one died. We had a great party. It was fantastic. Reunited with my family. Lovely stuff. And we ended our work with some incredible Scottish community organizers doing very direct action, not waiting for government to get involved, just making stuff happen, getting the voices of the public mapped out and designing public processes that can then be brought to platforms of decision-making and power, such as Glasgow City Council, saying, look, these are our voices, this is what we need. This is an example of graphic facilitation as a very powerful tool for bringing those voices to the table. And that is that. That's if you want to see more of some of the work we've done, those two words at the top, Vasudeva Ride, can help you find that on Facebook, on Instagram. We have a terrible website. We don't have the bandwidth to update much, but you can find some stuff there. And it really, this really has been the framework that I've been experimenting with in these last years, and that I love sharing with other people, of direct action, very locally rooted, but very transnationally connected. And this is how I always end things. Okay, who's in the room? Who is part of this program you're part of? What initiatives do you have between you? What resources do you have? And what needs do you see in your communities? And how can we collaborate?